Hey guys, welcome back to the Betar Project. It's your host, Nick Betar. Today we got a special guest, Simone Brick, also known as the Flying Brick. Simone, how are you? How's things?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for having me on, Nick.
You said you went for a run today, 33 Ks you said it was?
33 Ks over 2 runs. So yeah, I double run a lot of days, and today happened to be a morning long run and an evening still 60 minutes. So just happens that, yeah, it's a 33-degree day as well. So a bit
Always,
hot,
yeah.
but that's all right.
You should be like one of my mates. He runs it at night time. So just to beat the heat.
See, I kind of do the opposite usually, whereas I run, if it's a very, very hot day, I'll usually run right in the middle of the day if I'm only doing one, because I'm like, hey, heat training, what, poor man's altitude, right? And
True. So, and during the days when you're not training, what else do you do?
study. So at the moment, I'm in the middle of exam period. I've only got 2 left though, so that's fun. But yeah, mostly study. I also work as a run coach and a personal trainer. So a few different hats that I put on, and I definitely keep myself very busy.
And what are you studying at uni?
Biomedicine at the moment. So I'm doing a Bachelor of Biomedicine. I've already done a Diploma of Nursing a few years back, and obviously done studies in personal training and strength and conditioning as well. But yeah, currently I'm slowly making my way through a Bachelor of Biomedicine, because this year, thanks to COVID, I took on full time, but the rest of the time I've been studying the Bachelor, I've been doing it part time to actually fit in all the training as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask how did COVID affect all that, especially with exams and that?
Well, all exams are online, which is a very interesting way of sitting exams, and a lot of people don't like it. You can initially think, oh, that sounds easy, and like almost as if it would be easy to cheat and unfair, but they change the way that they write the exams and the way they do them. So that say like everyone gets multiple choice questions, but every student gets just a different collection of the multiple choice questions from a bank of questions, and so you can't like collude and tell people answers, because they'll shuffle everything around, and then the way they do it, it's like you've got 60 minutes to get 60 marks. And if you're having to look things up and do all that sort of stuff, because it's technically open book every exam, but if you have to look stuff up, you won't make the time. So it's, yeah, a bit stressful, but it works. It gets the degree done still from home. So every single thing on all year pretty much has been online.
Guess it's easy to have Google handy right next to you then.
You're not allowed to use Google during the exams. That's technically academic misconduct, and you would be kind of screwed if you needed to. But it technically is there. They have no way, I don't think, of actually figuring out if people do, but people probably do. But yeah, if you're having to Google the answers, then you're just not going to get all the marks anyway. So.
And what drew you to that area?
So I started nursing I started working as a nurse, and there was just a lot of, I want to say, roadblocks or things I saw wrong with the way things are done in the medical system, and also being a nurse. I don't know, I've always been very, I like to observe things, and then when I observe things and I see things that are wrong, I don't like following just convention, just for no particular reason. Like there was a lot of times I would ask why we had to do things in certain ways, and the only answer you got was because that's the way it's always been done. And to me, that was never a good enough answer or a good enough reason to do something. So it just didn't sit well with me, and I knew that staying a nurse wasn't going to really fulfill or like feel right for me. So I took just the avenue of doing more study, so that hopefully I can have a bit of influence on I'm now looking at going more into research, and sort of, I figure if you can't go from the bottom up, you go from the top down and change the research so that we can change the way things are done, because everything needs evidence
Exactly.
to prove that it's the right way to do it. What was that, sorry?
What sort of things you're looking to research?
I'm not entirely sure, but I'm very much the let's prevent things rather than band-aid fix things. So I love functional medicine, integrative medicine, all the things that are like treating disease and preventing disease with nutrition, exercise, alternative methods, but in a broad approach. So actually applying that to the public as a whole, and not it being a little niche alternative thing that only a few people have access to. And yeah, so more, I suppose, they're like things like the gut-brain connection, very interesting. I find very interesting. Reversing diabetes with diet, all those sorts of things. I have no clue exactly where I'm going to end up. That's, I don't know, part of the fun, I suppose, but I'll end up somewhere.
Sounds like a very interesting path that you're going to take. And I love that you're doing that, because I guess in society these days it's all about the quick fixes instead of preventatives and all that stuff. And it's kind of annoying. That's why I don't
Yeah.
like the health and the health sector.
Yeah, they focus a lot on what's wrong with people and not on how to make what's right with people even better. And then there was just so many times where, like, as a nurse, you're treating someone that's just had some sort of heart surgery and they're eating bacon and eggs in the hospital, and you're giving them all these cholesterol lowering medications while they're down bacon and eggs and cokes and meat pies and all sorts of stuff that you're just like, I don't understand. I'm filling a bucket that's open at the other end, kind of thing. So yeah.
It's amazing how, I guess, natural products can heal you so much, but because they're kind of free at the same time, go and exercise and that, they don't want to,
Yeah.
give that to you. Doctors just want
Yeah,
to.
it's like one of the doctors I know is like, you can't market big broccoli, kind of thing. Like, there's no money in, like, because there's like big pharma, there's all the big companies that you can market properly, but you can't really do much with broccoli and plants and all those sorts of things, or not to the same scale that people want to make money out of. So yeah, definitely a big problem there.
Exactly. Like, I was at uni myself. I was studying sport and exercise science, and I was playing semi-professional rugby league at the time, and I was noticing that every club, the first like thing on the list was they had a physio, but they didn't have a strength and conditioning coach to kind of prevent those injuries and strengthen you. I was like, that does not make sense.
Yeah, no, no, not at all. And that's the thing. It's like we're very quick. It's developed, the system's developed, and it's very quick to put a Band-Aid fix and hand out the easiest medication that you just have to take once a day without changing your lifestyle at all, even though and that doesn't treat the cause of any of the problems whatsoever. Whereas if you actually change lifestyle, and it doesn't have to be huge changes all the time, then you can both fix it and prevent anything reoccurring, rather than just become reliant on a medication. Because I suppose and this is coming from my path, is that I was reliant on medications for a very long time, and I was taking up to 20 medications a day to keep myself going, and I was only 20 years old. So I was definitely on that path myself before I kind of took myself off it through being my own little experiment in a way.
And I guess it comes down to education as well. Like, at that time, you probably weren't so much educated around it. You were just listening to what the doctor said, take this, take that, and you just did.
Yeah, not at all. And I try not to look back with any sort of resentment, because everything that's happened has gotten me to where I am today. So obviously it's all still like I take that mental approach of whatever happened is meant to be. But yeah, there's certainly things I look back on and I'm just like, that's the way I was treated and the way I see friends treated and stuff. I'm like, it's wrong. It doesn't, like, that's not the way it should be done. And that's not the way that even the current research is saying it is, but it's also, that's the way that gets people money and that sort of thing. So yeah, you can feel very cheated if you look back, and once you are educated, you can feel very cheated by the system if you actually know what happened and what's going on.
You see how much it is actually just a business. That's all they care about.
Yep. Pretty much, unfortunately.
Anyways, let's go back to the beginning. What was your upbringing like? Where you're from?
So I was born in Perth. Love little sand groper. But I was the only one of my family born in Perth, and I'm one of 7 kids.
Wow.
So I'm the second youngest of 7. Hence the competitiveness, because my 2 older sisters are much older than me, like 10 and 11 years older, whereas I'm surrounded by 4 boys. So I kind of grew up as one of the boys. And yeah, I was very much one of those kids that you just could not hold down, and couldn't keep still. But at the same time, I had a very much a curiosity about the world, I suppose you could say, because I reckon I've been people watching since I was about 4 or 5. And I've always used to love sitting up in trees and just watching the way people interacted. Hated school and hated the little games that people play with, I like you today, but I don't like you tomorrow, kind of thing. I remember just not fitting in many places other than on sporting fields. So loved my sport, played absolutely everything under the sun. Grew up more a basketballer than anything. And then transitioned into sort of swimming and football, proper football though, soccer.
Nice.
Um, and yeah, so I suppose in that way, somewhat typical, but also very atypical in that I don't know, I never had that feeling of being, which I very much cherish now, of feeling like I fitted in anywhere, because I was forever like picked out for either being above in academia or sports, or just, yeah, a little bit of a small pond as well, because I went to a very small primary school, then a very big high school where I managed to hide a little bit more, I suppose I could say. But yeah, my brain both worked very well for me and very much against me, because yeah, it didn't, like my later, well, even from my early teenage years, wasn't a great place to be, my head. But it's gotten there eventually. So I cherish now the way it works, but back then it was probably worked very much against me rather than for me.
Yeah. And family of 7, what nationality are you?
Aussie, but I suppose Irish-ish heritage, like European Irish heritage, and then we've got a bit of Spanish in there somewhere. But yeah, my pop, big family. My dad's one of 7, mum's one of 4, my pop was one of 13, Nana was one of, I don't even know, something similar. So yeah, lots of big Catholic family.
You expect that from a WOG family.
Trust me, there's a lot of good big Catholic families out there too. Our family was small by the standards of all the people I went to camp with when I was a kid. It wasn't unusual to find 14, 15 to a family.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's a crazy life. Like, it's one of the things where now I'm kind of like, I could never have that many kids. But at the same time, like, you're never alone. You're never bored. You're either angry, upset, having fun, or hurt usually. So it's definitely not a boring life.
Are all your siblings moved out of home now?
No. So there's my youngest brother. He's 5 years younger than me. So he just turned 21 in lockdown, unfortunately. So he had all these big party plans and ended up turning 21 in lockdown. So he's still at home. And my other brother that's closest in age to me, that's only 2 years older, he's still at home as well. He's kind of come and gone though. So he's gone out and in and out and in. And I now have 7 nieces and nephews. And so I've got all the 4 oldest all have kids.
That's one.
And there's partners everywhere, and yeah, Christmas is crazy. I've got like 55 cousins on one side and something like that too. So I don't even know. I've got a lot of cousins. I haven't even met them all. So
holy shit, what's Christmas going to be like for you guys this year?
I don't know. That's certainly going to be interesting. Yeah, because with COVID, we're not currently allowed. I think they're about to increase it to 10 people, which doesn't even cover all of my immediate family. So normally a small Christmas for us would be like 25 people. So I'm hoping that they actually make it big enough that we can have a family Christmas. But mum and dad have already said they might do just rolling Christmas, where we have it over a few days.
Do it via Zoom.
Oh, yeah, we've had a family Zoom catch up every Sunday at 1 p.m. Mum and dad have jumped on Zoom and just people come and go as they please, kind of thing. So yeah, we've had a lot of Zoom catch-ups as a family, because my siblings, they're all in Melbourne, but we're all outside each other's radiuses for a long time, and obviously not allowed to visit each other anyway.
So you're very adventurous as a child, as you mentioned. So you think that's kind of led you to the path you are in now?
Yeah. I've always loved nature and trees and being outside. I don't know if I've ever felt too comfortable inside for too long. And so, yeah, I definitely was very adventurous, and that I suppose I've tapped into a bit more recently, the last few years. And that's certainly part of my nature that I've fostered a little bit more recently. And it's been good to feel that again and just have a bit more of that adventurous side of myself, which is always there. And yeah, it's sometimes gets me into a lot of trouble, but usually now I've got enough of the wisdom side of things as well to get myself back out of it again pretty quick.
Lockdown would have affected you then, being stuck inside majority of the time?
It did, but that was why I've become very good at adapting and quick pivots. So it's I know what keeps me well and I know what keeps me happy, sort of thing. So And I've got a very, very good running coach who knows me inside and out, often better than I know myself at times. So I very quickly took on, as the first lockdown came in, I took on extra uni subjects. So that would, I knew, keep my brain busy. And then I got into an awesome training routine. It's my best year of training I've ever put in. I was lucky in a way to be coming off an injury going into the first lockdown. So races being cancelled didn't bother me much at all. I wasn't very fit at the time. So I very much looked at it as a chance to train a hell of a lot and get very fit. And yeah, I put in a massive weeks of training back to back to back to back, because there was nothing to distract me, nothing to stop me recovering well. And I was very set in routine, and routine helped me a lot. So it was not great not being able to get out and adventure, but I've done that before. Lockdown really has nothing on there. Obviously, my past, having spent so long pretty much locked up in hospital and it wasn't necessarily voluntary then. So spending weeks upon weeks inside, for the most part, I'm kind of used to. So even having an hour outside to run every day felt like a lot of freedom relative to where I've been. And then best buy I ever made was I bought a treadmill. So I was doing crazy runs. Like, I'd still get all my long runs in, and I'd just run 1 hour outside, then come and do another hour and a half on the treadmill inside, to get all my training in. I was doing about half my mileage for a while there on a treadmill, which was a lot of hours on the treadmill per week, but it gets it done. And as long as I'm both mentally and physically tired at the end of the day, then yeah, I'm pretty happy.
What's the point of it then? That's all good. Let's kind of go back a bit to, I guess, a bit of a darker time of your life where you kind of battled depression, anxiety, is it eating disorders you had as well?
Yep. Yeah.
Kind
Kind of the gamut.
Yeah, touch on that story there and how it all started.
Yeah. Well, as I suppose I touched on a little bit before, more my early teenage years, I developed for the first time, which it was only mostly in retrospect that we realized that how early it started, or I realized how early it started and what it was. But more when I was about 14, I developed my first sort of bout of depression, and being a teenager, I dealt with that in very teenage ways, and didn't really deal with it at all, to be fair. And over the next few years of high school, I suppose the structure of school sort of kept me floating above water in a way. But I was certainly, by year 12, I was definitely not in a good place, and I was having panic attacks and of pretty severe anxiety. And yeah, the loss then of the structure of school, just kind of, I took a gap year with the intention of, because for context here, which is just in terms of, I suppose, my physical health journey as well, one of the ways I suppose I did deal with depression and my feelings and everything was from the age of like 16, 17, 18, I was already a big kid. So I gained a lot of weight as a 12-year-old. So I was like an 80 kilo 12-year-old. So I was big in comparison to a lot of other people, but I wasn't eating any different at that stage. And then I think it got to about 16 and I kept getting knocked back from state representative soccer and a few other things that kind of all they told me was that I was fit enough, I had the skills, but I needed to lose weight and I didn't know how, because I didn't know how I'd gained it. And I felt very confused on that front as well. So that sort of fed into everything. And long story short, I ended up at sort of 95-ish kilos by the time I finished year 12. And not in a healthy way whatsoever. I had very severe asthma. I was struggling to get up the stairs, and life was not easy physically or mentally at that stage. So I took a gap year with the hope of doing the whole, I'm going to work on myself, I'm going to get fit, and I'm going to then enter uni, which I first was going to do nursing and paramedicine. After a year of work, getting money, and I don't know, actually figuring out life was what my thought was at the time as an 18-year-old thinks. And yeah, what that ended up resulting in a way was a very long and hard year of, I went, my addictive personality, I suppose you could say, or my very one-track mind, that once I started losing weight, I just didn't really stop. And I very quickly developed an eating disorder. that slowly, well, quickly actually, because I suppose I over-halved my weight in about 6 months. So yeah, there was about 50 kilos I lost in the end. That didn't take too long because I was just destroying myself, absolutely destroying myself mentally, physically. And that landed me in, yeah, I suppose in that year as well, there was suicide attempts. There was a lot of stuff that I suppose, or even looking back on now, it's all a bit of a whirlwind, because once it's taught me the value of nutrition, because once my brain was malnourished and I hadn't eaten for days on end, or I hadn't eaten enough for months, your brain just doesn't work anymore. It gives up in a way. So I couldn't rationalize anything, and I went from being a sort of a year 12 that did very well on my ATAR and was sort of very top of the state on that terms, to someone that I couldn't function mentally. I couldn't do much at all. I couldn't concentrate, couldn't have decent conversations with people. And it got to the point where I could color in and I could watch movies, and that was about it. That was all my brain would let me do, because I was so malnourished. And it was only enough, like all it took was a small bout of gastro and I would be in hospital. And yeah, that was certainly a rough time. And that, like, yeah, there's no words really that could describe what it's like to be malnourished, to be trying your best to rationalize, because part of me knew, like part of me at times would have that lucid thought of like, I'm destroying myself, but you'd almost work even harder to quash those thoughts, because they were the scary times, because you realize what you're doing to yourself. And it was easier to go back into a little shell that didn't pay attention, or wasn't able to recognize what was going on. And so there's times, I suppose, in there where, because I was, rather than numbing myself with food, I was numbing myself by not eating at all. And if there was times, because I was numb, like it was harder on my family in a way than it was on me. We tried many different tactics from home, but none of them really worked, and only resulted in a lot of tension at home. That essentially it culminated in my first suicide attempt, and that was mostly malnourishment in a way that just was, I wasn't functioning. I thought I was destroying everyone else's lives as well as my own. And that was the main driver, I suppose, at that point. That then, unfortunately, and I'm trying to do a bit of work with helping the people like the Butterfly Foundation and stuff change the way things are being done. But we're in the good old times where the criteria, I suppose, for an eating disorder are stupidly based on physical properties or physical manifestations of a mental disorder. So when I went into hospital at that point, I was in the acute cardiac unit for a week, I think. I don't really remember much. But I was then turned away from the hospital and sent home because I was told I didn't weigh little enough for the eating disorder ward. And this was at the point where I'd probably lost about 35, 40 kilos of the weight that I had on in about 3 or 4 months, and hadn't eaten at the time of going into hospital for, I think, 4 days. So I'd been treated for malnutrition, but then was told that, yeah, I wasn't sick enough the way I heard it was that I wasn't sick enough and I wasn't thin enough to have an eating disorder. And part of that is just because there's not enough eating disorder specific beds in the country. So there wasn't an option in one way, but also just the way the criteria is that I had the same behavior, same thoughts, and everything the whole time that every person that has an eating disorder would go through this in a way where you can have the same, you and yourself are suffering in the same way, but your diagnosis can change based on what you weigh, and a few maybe the behavior manifestations of your thoughts that change. So it's a very confusing thing, I think, and sometimes for the doctors as well, because I was like, okay, so right now, at that point in time, I was diagnosed with what was called EDNOS back then, eating disorder not otherwise specified, which in my mind was like, okay, I'm not really that sick then. And then I got sent home, and long story short, in that point, by 2 months later, when I was finally admitted to a treatment program, I met all the criteria for anorexia nervosa. So because in my mind, it was like that was the only way to justify my need for help, which I know, unfortunately, a lot of other people with eating disorders have gone through. And it's just not, it is changing because there's a lot of people now working for it to change, and at least the overall thoughts about what eating disorders are and how they're mental illnesses, not physical, is slowly catching up to reality. But yeah, eventually, luckily, which there's a lot of points along my path where I just look at how lucky I was, because I just so happened to be in the catchment area for one of the best day outpatient intensive day therapy programs in the country. And because I'm in the catchment area, I got bumped up on the wait list, and the wait list is normally sort of 6 months, and I only had to wait 2 months to get into the program. It's called the Butterfly Day Program. And it's run by Monash Health. It's not actually run by the Butterfly Program. They have one in Sydney, by the Butterfly Foundation, sorry. But yeah, I ended up spending 8 months there trying to regain 10 kilos of the, like it took so long, and it was so hard. And the amount of mental work and daily battles and fighting it takes to overcome your mind once it's malnourished is like nothing else. Like nothing else I have been through compares, because it's, in many ways you can look at it like an addiction of like whatever the behavior is, whether it's not eating or purging or whatever the way it manifests, it's like being addicted to that, and that's your way of numbing or coping with life. But instead of being able to avoid your addiction, which is to an anorexic not eating or being empty or that sort of thing, rather than being able to avoid it, like say an alcoholic or someone trying to quit smoking, you just avoid what triggers it. You have to eat every single day of your entire life. So it's like trying to face it, and rather than, it's like that thing they say with alcoholics where like it's easier to just go cold turkey and have no beers than it is to have one and learn to moderate it. But with eating disorders, you have to learn moderation, and you have to learn how to feed yourself and do everything. And that's why you find a lot of people, or at least in my experience, a lot of people I've met, and myself in particular, you can go from binge eating disorder to anorexia back to binge eating disorder as you try and find that middle ground of not using food to cope with life, because it's a thing we have to work with every day, or it has to be part of our everyday, and it's so vital to health that I learned a lot of that there, and I spent 8 months in that program. So it took me 8 months to get to a point where I was able to be sent home, which I lived at home at the time. So I was always home, but it was every single day you go in and you eat, and you're there in therapy doing all sorts of different groups and stuff, even Tai Chi at times, and with nurses and everything every single day. So it was a very intensive program. And that I got out of in 2014, I think. Yeah, mid-2014 is where I finished up there. And at that point, I lied. I had run, and my pursuit to lose weight, but that was very much I wouldn't even call it running now. It was very much just a punishment for myself kind of thing. So I didn't really have a relationship with running at that point, because the whole time in that program, there's no physical activity whatsoever, other than Tai Chi and yoga and those sorts of things. So yeah, all of that didn't end by any means whatsoever, but I exited that program halfway through 2014. And then I suppose that this is where I feel like that's enough of a story in one, in a way. But it's another one where eating disorders for many people are manifestations of deeper struggles or other struggles. And that's why they're often comorbid or come alongside depression, anxiety, OCD, other mental illnesses. And for me, I dealt very well in that program because it gave me a goal. It gave me a structure. It gave me something to work towards that was very tangible. We had a certain weight we had to hit every week and all those sorts of things. So it was in some ways easier than dealing with what came afterwards, which was I was great for 2 months, feeling like I'd kind of won the lottery, hit the top of the world, and was finally eating and living again, and could get all the things back that an 18-year-old wants, like or which, was I 19 yet? No, yeah, I was 19. So I got given my car back because that got taken off me. I got given the freedom to actually go out on my own, because for a long time there I was forever with someone, or carer. And my mum had quit her job to become my full-time carer. So it was very much feeling like a 19-year-old being treated like a 2-year-old at times, but that was necessary and very much needed and saved me for a long time there. But I was good for a few months, and then I would have exited there in about May, and by July of 2014, it was apparent that the eating disorder was a problem, and a big problem, because it was the most life-threatening thing that was going on at the time. But I hadn't done anything to address any of the things that had caused the eating disorder in the first place. And that's a fairly common thing for a lot of people, where you've got to delve a little bit deeper beneath the way you cope with life. So there may be problems with the way you cope with life, an addiction, or something that you do, even in addition to exercise, or something you need every day to cope, to get through the day. And there's something underneath that driving it. And for me, that was very much the depression, anxiety, and PTSD as well from earlier in life, and everything that happened in the development of my eating disorder, and relationships I got into at the time that were not healthy at all. And so, yeah, within a couple of months of getting out of the eating disorder program, I found myself living in a psych hospital, which I hadn't actually been admitted to a psych hospital by that point. I'd done fairly well of desperately trying to keep myself out of them after many threats to be put in. And yeah, but it was a couple of months later, I got a real bad bout of major depression, and I didn't really get out of bed for a few weeks there. So my to-do list went from everything under the sun to fill my day to just see if I can have a shower today, and see if I can actually talk to someone. So I still have all the lists I wrote on my friend actually wrote on my hospital wall whiteboard of a very simple list of things to do for the day, and I couldn't get any of them done. So from, I suppose the mid 2014 up until my birthday that year, and then May the year after. So probably spent 6 months all up living in hospital, up to 8 weeks, 9 weeks at a time. And there would be times there where I wouldn't really leave my room for 2 or 3. So very much my own little lockdown, but not in a good way at all. And it all manifests in a way of, on my birthday that year, I turned 20. So on my 20th birthday, leading into that was probably the worst stage, because my mind, ties back into where I am now with studying medicine, because I was on all sorts of medications that I very much now don't agree with me having been on, and especially the doses I was on, because I was on like doses that you wouldn't put, I would never put someone on, with antipsychotics and all sorts of different medications. I was numbed. So the way that my psych at that point in time treated me was to chemically sedate me every single day. So there's this drug called Seroquel, and it's I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
Okay, it's people could take it to sleep. It's an antipsychotic. People take it as a sedative to sleep. If I gave you 12.5 milligrams, you would probably fall asleep within about half an hour and have a bit of a nap, and it would be very woozy. But you do build up a bit of a tolerance to it. So over time, people end up on like 150, 300 milligram sort of doses. And my brain, I was in all ways losing it a little bit. I was very much losing touch with reality at times there. So
you weren't there.
Yeah, no, and scarily enough, and this was very much a scary time for my mum, where I developed dissociative disorder. And mum was my full-time carer, and she could tell when I was dissociating, because I would talk about myself in the third person. And it was, in some ways, the things you see in movies that you never believe would happen to yourself. But yes, things like saying Simone's not home or Simone's not here to mum, and just not being, I couldn't be roused, and I have no memory whatsoever. And unfortunately for myself, one of my reactions at times would dissociate would be to run away. And so I'd run away, and that's where a lot of my self-harm comes from as well, from dissociation, and I suppose in a way trying to bring myself back to reality. So I've got a lot of severe self-harm that I've had multiple surgeries for, trying to put myself back together. And I had a lot of delusions as well at the time. One of the ones that I suppose I try and laugh at now in a way, but I believed every single problem I had was caused by my little finger. So I chopped my little finger off, which sounds absolutely insane, and it is, but it's where my mind was at the time. And even at the time, it sort of seemed rational, which it clearly isn't. But yeah, what that culminated in is my psych having me on a dose of, I'd wake up in the morning and take the sedatives. So I'd take like 600 milligrams of Seroquel in the morning and 600 milligrams at night, and possibly more throughout the day. And I was also addicted to benzodiazepines and temazepams to get me to sleep, Valium multiple times a day. So I was very much addicted to benzos as well as on the sedatives every single day. And I don't remember much of that time whatsoever, as well as, and I was still having delusions. I was still very much not with reality for a lot of the time. And a lot of them were based around my birthday. And for some reason, well, I kind of know why, but yeah, believing that if I lived to be 20 years old, that my entire family would die. And so I ended up in seclusion and locked up literally in a big white room with someone staring over me and sedated through my 20th birthday. So I was on the public ward then. So it's a very different vibe, like not vibe, but very different system, the public and private mental health care systems. Private's a lot better, and you'll actually have a chance of a decent recovery through them, but they're all voluntary. So as soon as you get too sick or too bad to be contained, you have to go public, because they're the only place you can be put in involuntary ward and sedated and restrained and all those sorts of things that, yes, they save you, and they saved my life, very much so, but at the same time, I still have PTSD from a lot of the things that happened behind closed doors in psych wards, in a way, in order to keep me alive. So yeah, I spent my 20th birthday and probably 5 or 6 birthdays after that in hospital, but my 20th birthday in particular, I was locked up on Monash P block and then ended up at Dandenong. Pardon?
In a white box.
Yeah, it's even bad that the hospital, like the psych ward, is called P block. Like, it's not even a good name, and it's a horrible place. And it still disgusts me to this day that we put so many sick, struggling people that are in desperate need of help in a very horrible place that they're never going to get better. It's a very sad place to be, and a very broken system in so many ways. And I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm very much one of the lucky ones to have gotten out of the system and out of that place, without a huge amount of baggage and sort of being stuck in the cycle of in and out of the hospital. But yeah, there's the big rooms with padded beds and padded chairs and padded walls and everything. They exist. They definitely exist. And the whole, like, stabbing people in the butt and injecting people in the butt to sedate them and put them to sleep. Yeah, that happens too. You wouldn't, and it's one of the things where growing up and in my family, like, I'm the only one that's had any major struggles like this. So you just wouldn't believe it was yourself. And even now, the way I remember it and looking back, it's almost like I'm remembering my life, but also just still pinching myself of going, I never would have thought that would be me. And it makes you realize the value of sanity and the value of being able to use your brain and have control of your brain, because it could happen to anyone. It's just the perfect storm of events is all it needs to tip people over the edge. And it could, like, anyone could develop any of the problems that you see people struggle with and people are often degraded for. But it's like, I'm now very comfortable among people that struggle with addiction or struggle with any sort of mental illness, because I feel in a way more accepted for the fact that they know that it could happen to anyone because it's happening to them. And almost everyone you see that's struggling in that way, they don't want to struggle and they don't want to do the things that they do, but they're often still degraded for it or spoken down, or feared even. Fear's the worst thing, because I still remember people fearing me in a way, or the way I would react to things. And there was times there where I was the person walking down the street talking to myself and saying things that like telling people that they could hear my thoughts, or that there were cameras watching me, or believing that flowers were cameras, and all those things that people think only happen in movies, or if they see happen, there's a fear response from most people rather than an understanding or a want to help. And so I still remember being feared, but I suppose the thing there is no one feared me more than myself, and no one feared other people more than me. So it was like I'm more scared of other people that saw me than they should have been scared of me, because I was only out to destroy myself. And that's often the case, unfortunately, with people with mental illness, where I was just so afraid I was destroying the lives of everyone around me. And that was the biggest driver for me of not wanting to live anymore. I wanted to live. It was that I just didn't want to destroy other people's lives, which you can very much feel like you're doing in the current system and the way it's all viewed. And it's you're not taught to view your strengths or to find the strengths in what you're going through. You're just taught that it's wrong and you should fix it. But all you're given to fix it is pills to take every day that often make it feel worse anyway.
That is crazy. So you hit basically rock bottom.
Yeah, you could certainly say that. There were definitely multiple times there where I suppose I'm in the position where I am so thankful for life, and I'm so aware of the reliance we all have on other people, because without other people, I wouldn't be alive. Because there was some of the attempts I took on my own life, I wasn't the one that got myself out of them. There's 2 times there that I went to sleep believing that I wasn't going to wake up again, and it was only luck one time and being found by nurses the other that kind of got me through. And left to my own devices, like I wouldn't be here. So it's made me very much both thankful for the second chance that I have, or the sixth chance. I don't think I've used all 9 yet, but I'm getting close. But the very thankful for that, but also so aware that it's like we all need help. And I'm the first person that if I'm struggling, it's like, okay, hands up, I need help. Someone help me, please, kind of thing. Because I was so ashamed at the start of everything to ask for help. And it was very much trying to hide the fact I was in hospital, or trying to hide what I was struggling with. Whereas now it's kind of like, so by the way, I've had this struggle today. And it's like, even the little things now, which everything now to me that I struggle with feels somewhat little compared to where I've been. But I recognize that if I'm very open now about the little struggles that I have from day to day, of the anxiety, any body image concerns, anything along those lines, and I just own up to it straight away and ask for help straight away, then that's the way to prevent, rather than have to dig yourself into a hole and then be forced to rely on other people. If you rely on other people earlier in the process and recognize that asking for help is a strength, not a weakness, kind of thing, then that's the way that we as humans are made to function. We need each other, as opposed to having to rely on ourselves and do the whole big bravado of like, no, I got this. Because we don't. None of us do. None of us have figured it out. And we all need that extra voice of reason at times to help us through.
Exactly. We're mammals. We're a pack animal. We need to be together.
Oh, for sure. And it goes right back to our ancestry of like the people that all of us that are alive today are only alive because our ancestors survived in a pack, and they're the ones that were able to be in a pack and rely on each other. So we've all got those genes in us to rely on each other and to be open to each other and to help each other. It's just both tapping back into them in the modern world that we're all struggling with.
Yeah. Can I ask, how did you come out the other side? Like, they're pumping you full of drugs, you would have been numb. How did you kind of process anything and then come out the other side?
Yeah, that's an interesting story in itself. There was one point there just after my public admission, and I suppose my family, my angel of a mother, never gave up on me, and she was, I think, for almost every single day I was in hospital, she was also there visiting. They bought me a dog. That was great. So my dog was a service dog for me for a while. So there's all these little things, I suppose, that added up. But then there was one point where just after my public psych admission and my psychotic episode, because it was a full-blown psychotic episode that they were sedating me through for my 20th, that I then was in high dependency for. And then I think it was about 2 weeks after that, I went back because I was finally able to go back to my private hospital and see my private psych. And I can still remember him just looking at me and telling me, Simone, this is fucked. And I was like, so you're going to help or what are we doing? And it was one day, it was one strong day there where I had lucid thoughts and I had this awareness of going, I just remember his reaction to reading all the reports from the hospital and then him giving me the prognosis of telling me that I was always going to be reliant on institutions and that I was always going to be reliant on medication. And he gave me that speech in a way that doctors are taught to give of the whole prognosis and what your life's going to look like for the rest of your life kind of thing. And the way even what he diagnosed me with, because he'd misdiagnosed me as well. And to his credit, like he was doing everything he knew in the system that he worked in to work with his own knowledge. So in many ways, like I don't have any like resentment against him, other than like it wasn't working. And I realized in that moment of just going, who are you to tell me that I'm never going to get better? And it was that one little thought of going, hang on, like the person that's supposed to help me has given up. That's not the way this is supposed to go. I'm the one that's given up, kind of thing. It was almost a competitive thing of, no, you're not allowed to give up on me. I've given up. And yeah, that sparked this cascade, I suppose you could say, of rather than myself doing everything I could to destroy myself, of all the negative cascade I was in, of one thing leading to another and all of them being detrimental. I took one step, in a way, one big step that was changing psych, because I was under the impression that a lot of people still are under, I suppose, that once you have a psych, you're stuck with them. Like that's your doctor, that's who you go to. But now when I'm counseling people through all this, I'm like, no, you shop around, you shop for psychs, and you find someone that works well with what you think and works well with, and gives you a prognosis you agree with, gives you a treatment plan you agree with. And as much as when you give them all the information, you interview them in a way, and you don't just settle for someone that you're not happy with. And so I changed psychs and I moved hospitals as well, because my new psych was at a different hospital. And this was another very lucky spot, I suppose, where we knew someone that got me in with the psych that wasn't taking many people, because his books were very full. But he sort of heard my story and took me on. And I can still remember, I'm a like, and it still and very much was at the time, a big Doctor Who fan. And he's this Irish little he looks like a leprechaun. I always call him a little leprechaun. But yeah, I walked in and he heard my whole story. And then I just remember him saying, he's like, Simone, I am the doctor, as like this, the way of the Doctor Who person. Anyways, that was the moment I was like, okay, cool. We're doing something here. Because the first thing he did was he withdrew me from, well, he admitted me to the hospital because I was on so many medications that I couldn't do it at home. But I spent the next 2 months on essentially a detox program of withdrawing from all the medications that I was on. So he was trying to get me completely off Seroquel and antipsychotics and every medication that the other psych had put me on. And that took, because you have to do it very slowly, it took a whole month and a half just to get off that one medication. And withdrawal from most psych medications absolutely sucks. Like there is no way around the fact that it is a horrible state of living. Going onto them is bad enough, and then coming off them is even worse. And so, yeah, thankfully I was admitted to hospital the whole time. My mental space wasn't much better, but we were on a path that was getting me somewhere. So that felt somewhat okay. And essentially what that culminated in at the end is I was still on benzodiazepines the whole time. I was reliant on them for sleep and to get through the day. But then at the end of the 2 months, I'd been in hospital 2 months and my mental space really wasn't getting much better. I was still incredibly suicidal on a lot of days. And so we ended up doing electroconvulsive therapy. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I've heard of it. not too sure what it is.
Yeah, if you well, it's a bad representation of it, but if you've seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it's where they put the 2 electrodes on the side of his head and zap him.
Oh, yeah.
So that is still done, but you're asleep. They put you to sleep before they do it. And yeah, it's essentially they put electrodes in your brain and they give your brain a big shock and they induce a seizure in your body. And no one, I love the fact that no one knows how the hell it works, but it works really well. The only downside is that it also causes memory loss. So it's a very, very scary process to go through. Your body feels like it's been hit by a truck because you're having seizures. But it helped. So I had to do very much a cold turkey because you can't be on benzodiazepines and have ECT at the same time. So I found out 2 days before I was having ECT and I had to do a cold turkey off benzodiazepines. And I don't think I slept for about 50 something hours. It was great. Yeah, full blown cold turkey they could do it because I was in hospital. So like I was fine in a way, but I remember the shakes, the full withdrawal. Like I have a lot of respect for addicts that like I know what they have to, like I know at least part of what they have to go through of withdrawing from medications and those sorts of things and reliances. But yeah, I had ECT and that changed. That again was another little step along the way that changed everything because it got me out of the hospital. It amazed me how much it like cleared my mind. So it just enabled me to see the world again in a different way. And almost, I suppose the way you could look at it is it was like the gray turning into a bit of color kind of thing of feeling emotions again. Because that's the biggest thing with depression is you just don't feel anything, good or bad, but you just feel nothing. There's no internal reaction to in the normal way that people are used to, like no anxiety or anything. And so, yeah, it gave me back a bit of emotion. And then I exited the hospital at that point, and that was started May 2015, somewhere around there, May, June. And then by the end of the second half of that year is when I started studying personal training. So it was like those little things that my parents and everyone helped me put in place then of trying to keep myself well. And put myself in a community and doing something and learning because I'd obviously had to give up on my jobs. And yeah, I started doing personal training. I also in 2015 started running. I suppose I should probably put running into this story of like the start of 2015 is when I started running. And I was not fast. Yeah, I was very much back of the pack kind of runner, just doing my little thing, very much celebrating what I would call what for me now is very slow runs and short runs. But yeah, I started after that ECT, I started training for my first marathon, which was in November of 2015. And I never want to give the impression that everything from there got good because I've still was in and out of hospital. I spent another 5 weeks having magnetic seizure therapy, which is a part of a research trial, which is ECT, just slightly different, induced by magnets. So I spent 5 weeks having that in October of 2015, just before my marathon. Started studying PT, ran that marathon, and I ran that marathon with absolutely everything I had. I've never put more emotion into a run because I was told by doctors at the time, obviously with my eating disorder history and everything, that they were worried it was going to re-spark that. And so I made it my mission to run that marathon and not lose a single bit of weight while doing it. In the training or in the lead up or afterwards, and I achieved that, and also ran the marathon a hell of a lot faster than I suppose I was aiming, but that was definitely ignorance is bliss situation of just take off at a sprint and hold on for a marathon. Yeah. What time?
Yeah.
That one I ran in 3:19, I think.
Oh wow.
3:19:25, I think, or 26. So yeah, I ran that, and that was, my body wasn't necessarily prepared to do that. I was injured just before, but my mind very much pushed me to the point of going, pain is awesome, pain is great. Like I could push through pain. That was the redeeming factor of me getting through that marathon as fast as I did. And yeah, so that's 2015. And then from there, 2016 was a bit of a write-off in the end because I started studying nursing, but I also developed all the physical manifestations of what happens when you lose 50 kilos in 6 months and destroy your body. I've developed gastroparesis, severe reflux, and I ended up in hospital for physical reasons and had to have surgery on my stomach. So I've had a Nissen fundoplication is what it's called, where they like rearrange your stomach a little bit. So I had a lot of those problems, had to stop running, but then ended up training for my next marathon because they told me that I shouldn't. So I did. I actually signed up for my next marathon the morning of my surgery, that I was not going to be able to run for 3 months afterwards, and the marathon was 6 months away. So I was doing real good. And I very much had a runner's mindset at that stage of like, I will run, I don't care. I couldn't run for a bit, but then trained for another marathon. Ended up doing that marathon, but also having another round of MST because my depression came back at the same time, which I was skydiving at the time, and that was what helped me realize that my depression was coming back, because skydiving didn't even feel good. I would jump out of the plane and there was no adrenaline, no anxiety response, absolutely nothing. It was like just falling. I was like, okay, cool, I'm falling through the sky, whatever. Like, cool. That was what in me actually was very refreshing in a way, because it made me realize how my whole, I was like, okay, the neurotransmitters in my head are just not working, because I'm like, there was just zero response. Like, there should not be no response whatsoever to this. It's like internally, there was no heart flutter, absolutely nothing. So yeah, I ended up back in hospital for a month. I ended up back in treatment for the time I was in doing the marathon. So I actually, ran the marathon in between 2 treatments with the seizure therapy. Not recommended at all again. But I, again, sort of ran a very stupidly good marathon for where I was at the time, but I was also stupidly ignorant and had no idea how to run a marathon. So still, because I hit my 15K PB and everything from then onwards as well, didn't know I should drink, didn't know I should take in nutrition at all, and just raced my little heart out. Also raised a lot of money for the Butterfly Foundation, which is what got me through that one again, that mental side of running for other people. And yeah, so I suppose that is all just culminating in that big cascade of events, in a way, of the positive cascade that happens from having a community, having a purpose, having something that physically was keeping me healthy, and a lot of support along the way, because there was, in the background, there was always psychs, there was dietitians, there was everyone helping me get through that process to where I got to. And then one of the major turning points that came not long after that marathon was being picked up and started to be, I suppose, nurtured in a way, or just taught by my coach, my running coach. I started with him not long after, so that marathon was in October, and I started with him sort of November, December. I also spent a month volunteering in Kenya completely by myself, just flew to Kenya because I could, and worked as a nurse for a month.
That like?
As a 21-year-old, that was insane. Like, because I lived in a little village. Like, I just lived in a family's home in a little village in a mud hut for a month. I was only 21. I didn't speak the language. I was the only white person there other than another volunteer, or 2 volunteers. And it was very much a culture shock in a way, but beautiful. It taught me to rely on myself. It taught me so many things about life, and was another reminder of how good we have it here, no matter how bad we have it at times. We feel we have it at times. So it just taught me that the world is huge, the world's big, and there's so many things that you can think matter that don't really. And yeah, so I actually work in a methadone clinic there too. So I was working with addicts in Kenya, in Mombasa. So I was working with handing out methadone, and as well as a child health clinic, immunizations and all those sorts of things. So I did that for a month, which was another big factor in just learning to rely on myself and look after myself, because obviously traveling overseas, my poor parents, I probably gave them a heart attack just doing that, not long after everything that I'd put them through, or where my whole family had been through. But yeah, I did that and came back, and then I dove headfirst into running. I was studying nursing as well, but I love it. And since the first run, the first run that I ever loved, or ever would call my first run, was from hospital, was a very big sense of freedom and purpose and power. And so for me, it's always been that. And so as soon as my coach sort of gave me leeway to sort of jump into it and actually focus on it a little bit, I gave up soccer. I gave up all other sort of sports and stuff, and just dove into it. I very much treated every run like I was training in a way, or the mindset of an elite, before I was ever anything that looked like an elite or was very fast whatsoever. But I did all the little 1%ers from the get-go. spent all my time training and focused on the training and everything. I loved my academics, always have, always will, always love studies. But yes, that was 2016, and the whole of 2017, I just ran and raced and did all those things. That the 2017 is also when I started the bachelor, I should say. So 2017, I started the Bachelor of Biomedicine, was running, working as a PT at times, but mostly just running, I'll be honest. And it wasn't until the start of 2018 that I raced on the track. So I raced a 3K steeple on the track at the state championships. I think I came fourth in that race, and I was quite happy. And here was me trying to be a good little track runner. And then a week later, I was like, "Oh, coach, so can I go run up and down a mountain?" And that was Mount Donabuang in Warburton. And I went and ran up and down a mountain, and a week after track, so I wasn't trained of the mountains at all. I hadn't run any hills whatsoever. But went and ran. I won that race, and as part of winning that race, I won a sponsorship, which is the current sponsorship I have, which is with Solomon and Sunto, who I love. And they've supported me ever since. And so from there, I think 4 weeks after that first mountain run, I ran my first Australian mountain running champs. And turns out not many people love running up a really big mountain and doing 10Ks uphill, but it suits me because there's one thing I can do. It's at this point, it's keep moving forward. And the mindset of just, okay, it hurts whatsoever. Take another step. That's fine. That's an easy thing to do, I suppose, after everything I've been through. So 4 weeks after that, I found myself winning the Australian Mountain Running Championships, which booked me a ticket to Andorra that September. So all of a sudden I went from someone that was a pretty mediocre track runner / 5-10K that was trying to just build her way back up to road marathons and that sort of thing, to the Australian mountain running champ going to a world championship. So that was 2018, 2 years ago. And life's been a whirlwind ever since, I'll be honest. I don't remember. One day just bleeds into the next of run, study, sleep, eat a hell of a lot of food to fuel the running, and my running's just getting more and more miles, but the more I run, the better I feel. So
that's crazy, from where you've come from to now this, I guess, elite athlete.
And there's a lot of people that go, it's just so fitting that I spend my days running up and down mountains after everything, and they're like, you've conquered your own mountain and now you just go run up and down others. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's the reason it's, I suppose, in the way it suits me, is there's a huge mental component to mountain running, because it hurts from the first step. Like, you know that the first step of running up a 10%, 20%, 30% or 40% slope is going to hurt, and it's going to be hard. But it's the fact that it's hard that makes getting to the top great, and that's what I love. And then I suppose I love even more running downhill, because that you have to go against every instinct the human body has, because you're trying not to fall over. And the steeper it gets, the more that becomes the case, because the fastest way down a hill is to lean into it and lean forward. Where you find most people leaning back, landing on their heels. But if you lean forward and land on your toes, not only do you go faster, you beat up your legs less also. And then getting good at that is just training the brain more than the body in a way. Obviously, you've got to train your quads because they cane. But that suits me in a way, because it's just fear. It's just overcoming fear. And there's so much of life that is just overcoming the fear of, you only fear something before you do it, because you fear unknowns. You fear things that you just don't know what the outcome's going to be. But the more you can trust yourself in any aspect of life, I suppose, and overcome fears and push through things, the less you'll fear. And the less fear you have, the more freedom you have.
Exactly. Wow. What's some of your favorite races, and what's the longest distance you've actually run?
Okay, longest distance I've run would be about 55K at this point. I'm currently training for an 85K race. The longest distance I run between 50 and 55K more times than I could count, a lot. And the longest time I've been running, there was one in Chile last year when I went to Chile for World Championships in Argentina. I did a 53-ish kilometer run that took me like 10 hours because of the terrain that I was on. And I was out there by myself for 10 hours, just sort of trotting around mountains and stuff in Chile, which was awesome. So that's the longest time I suppose I've done. And then what was the other part? What am I training for? Or
The longest distance, but you already answered that one.
Oh yeah, okay.
On those runs, especially the longer ones, when shit gets tough, what's going through your
Oh
mind?
yeah.
What are you saying to
Um,
yourself?
I spend a good proportion of the time trying to get out of my own head,
Yep.
because the more you can get out of your own way and just stop thinking, the better. So I remember the only ultra I've ever raced, which was a 53-ish kilometer ultra. It's the only one I've ever sort of done as a event. I think I got to about 35k, and I wasn't trained. I wasn't very fit for that. It was actually this year. I was coming off injury and wasn't very fit or well trained for the distance, but I knew I could make the distance. That was fine. So I got to about 35k's. I was not enjoying life because I knew I could be running faster if I was fitter, and was a bit annoyed at myself and climbing up a hill. And I think for a solid 5 kilometers, I just sung Dory, just keep swimming, like free. I suppose the one superpower in a way that I've been told people a lot of long distance runners have, of just a very high tolerance for monotony. So I will sing to myself. I will count. I have counted up to 8,000 before, just while running, just counting my steps, kind of thing. And all the things that get me out of my own head and out of my way, because the minute you start thinking, especially when you're in the like hurting and in pain, the minute you start thinking, the minute you'll find excuses to stop and reasons to slow down. And I remember I was walking along the trail up until then. I was like, okay, start singing, just keep swimming. And from that point onwards, for the next 5k, I ran. I was running pretty slow, but I was running because I was out of my head and I wasn't trying to come up with all the excuses to stop. So for me, events, race days, even training runs at times, it's like you just get out of your own way, because your body can do it. It's the mind that you've got to work on to actually get through it. And I've never gotten to the end of a run and gone, oh, I wish I hadn't pushed through that. Because yeah, even like my big weeks of training, like I'll get to the second half of a lot of runs and just be like, oh my God, I can't do this. But when you get to the end, that's the value, and that's pushing through, I suppose, which my coach called character building. Character building runs are the runs you don't want to do, but you get through them, and because you can. Like there's a difference between being injured and not, you shouldn't do a run, versus just being tired or just not wanting to. Yeah, there's many little mental tactics I use. One of the ones I've told a fair number of people now about as well is playing games. So in shorter races where there's more people around, or just busier races where there's other people that you can chase down, I play Pac-Man. So in my head, I pretend I'm the ghost. No, I pretend I'm the Pac-Man and all the people ahead of me are ghosts, and I'm just trying to eat them up. So yeah, and I actually score myself. So I score points for every person I pass, and I lose points for every person that passes me. Like little things like that you think sound stupid, because like in the moment during it, like just a day-to-day life, I'm like, yeah, that's not normal. Your brain is just not designed to do that. But in the middle of a race, when you're hurting, like they make all the difference.
It's funny the stuff you come up with when you're running those long distances. I ran my first marathon about probably 2 months ago now, and we ran it at night time. So we finished at like 3 a.m. in the morning. And
Cool.
I was singing, I think at one stage, like Eminem at one stage. And
yeah, it's when all the ghosts come out. Like that's when nighttime. It's amazing what songs pop into your head too.
And you remember all the lyrics.
Oh yeah. I actually have a bit of a gauge for myself of when I'm climbing a hill. There's a song that I sing, and I know when I'm pushing really hard when I can't remember the lyrics. Because there was one race I did that at the bottom of the climb, I could sing the whole song. And then by the time I got to the top of the climb, I was just repeating the first 3 lines, because that was all my brain would let me remember by that point, because I was just hurting that bad and pushing that hard. So yeah, it's like you can use your own like there's strange things your mind comes up with when you're spending 14 hours a week by yourself, usually running. So it's an awesome but cool place to go to explore yourself.
Yeah, I'm actually signing up for a 50k race next year, which would be interesting. So
nice. Which one?
Elephant Trail. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have heard of that.
Macquarie, yeah. So I'm signing up for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
Very interesting. Push myself.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's always worth it. It'll hurt. They always do, but that's like, if it was easy, it wouldn't be as good on the finish line.
Exactly. Like I only started running since COVID hit. because the gyms
Yeah, there's
closed.
a lot of people like that, which is awesome. I'm actually loving how many people have started running just because like they can't do anything else.
And I love it too. And especially like where I live, we have like a little running community. So it's awesome. We all get
Oh,
together.
you live in like my dream location for running. Like, I would love to be anywhere close to the Blue Mountains to live. That would be like training mecca for me.
Beautiful. On the weekend, we did a 4 hour hike, which you would probably run it. We ran bits of it coming back up, and the stairs were so steep. It was a killer.
Was that further steps or?
Um, so it's called Governed Sleep, and the steps were like some of them come up to your chest.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, it's crazy. But
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, it took us 4 hours, and by the end of it, my quads were freaking cramping, and it was bloody hell.
Yeah, that sounds like my kind of run. I love it.
I was bloody annoyed at my friend because have you heard of Tailwind?
Yep, love Tailwind. Tailwind actually, it's everything. It's all I rely on for all my runs.
Yeah, so my mate's sponsored by them, and he didn't even bring any. I was like, what the I'm trying to bring your sponsor.
Tailwind's great.
Yeah, I think it's the most popular brand for running, I'm pretty sure.
No, definitely in the ultra scene. It works. Like, you don't need anything else. That's good.
Yeah, so most weekends I'm out there trying to do some sort of running. Every Saturday we have a run club. So yeah, it's awesome environment up here.
Yeah, I've run with the run club and stuff there. So it's certainly a great place for the world to be.
On that, where's, I guess, some of the places around the world running's taken you?
Some incredible places. My favorite would be El Chalten, which is in Patagonia, in the bottom of Argentina, technically, that one. But yeah, El Chalten's where Mount Fitzroy is, which if most people just know the Patagonia, the brand, the logo on that is the outline of Mount Fitzroy. So that I spent 2 weeks training there, and that's like my soul's home. I love it there. So I've done a bit of travel through Chile as well. So Chile and Argentina, Patagonia, Torres del Paine National Park, which some people may know, Pucón in Chile. And then my first world champs was in Andorra. So Andorra was absolutely beautiful, incredibly mountainous, and like the whole country is a mountain. We had to drive back into Spain for me to find a flat place to run before world champs. So that was insane. And then I did a road trip after world champs there with my coach to go all around the top end of Spain, bottom end of France. But in terms of like race running, world champs has been Andorra and Villa la Angostura in Argentina. I've done New Zealand mountain running champs, but the whole travel for running thing was meant to take off this year because I had races set up, race entries set up for, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Wales, Italy. Like I had 6 races confirmed for July and August of this year. Obviously, none of those happened, but they have all rolled over my entries for next year. So I am hoping that everything goes ahead and I get to, there's a lot of, like Austria as well, because there's a mountain run called, Grossglockner, Siesenal, Snowdon International. There's one in top of Italy. And so I like the travel side of things is slowly taken off eventually when COVID lets us. But I've still been to some of the most incredible places that you could imagine. I've also run the GR trail. So there's trails called GR Trail. I don't even know what it stands for now that I think of it, but on the Costa Brava coast of Spain. And that was probably my second favorite after El Chalten is Costa Brava coast. It's so pretty.
Wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds like the stuff I want to start getting into.
Yeah, and I have so many moments where I'll run to the top of a mountain completely by myself in a foreign country after traveling, backpacking by myself. And I like coming from where I'm coming from of not being able to look after myself for even one day. Like there's so many moments I've had on top of mountains of just going, life is absolutely insane. But the fact that we have a day to use today and to make the most of is pretty incredible. So it's something that because of where I've been, I think I cherish even more where I go.
Yeah. Do you document it at all?
I have a very, very in-depth training diary for the last like 4 years or 5 years, or however long, like 2017 onwards.
A little YouTube would be awesome.
Yeah, I actually fully YouTubed. I have, which people really want to go back in my archives. I did YouTube my whole trip to Kenya. I took daily videos of my whole trip to Kenya. That was before I was it was before I had run that much though. But yeah, I documented that very well, and then everything else is all photos for the most part. And I've got a blog. I have a website that I put a blog up, and I put race reports up on the blog. It's been a little bit sparse the last couple of months just because of full-time study because of COVID. But yeah, I've got a blog where I document a lot of stuff, and I've also documented the entire journey. There's a lot more information from both me, my mum, other people who were around at the time have written pieces up there. And I think one of the biggest things I document with is poetry as well. So a lot of the places I go and things I experience, I write up in poems. So there's a bit of my poetry on the website as well.
That's awesome. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I haven't touched it in a little bit, which I feel bad about, but there will be more blogs coming eventually.
That's all right. What are some of the setbacks you've had in your running career? Like, what injuries have you had?
My own fair share. I'm pretty hardy for the most part, because I think most of that comes from my background with soccer and other sports. But I've had my fair share of like little tendon things and those sorts of things that you can usually run through. But last year I got a sacral stress fracture, so sort of a broken back, I suppose you could say. And that happened during a race in New Zealand. So I didn't run after spending 2 days running on it, but only 2 days, thankfully. I didn't run for 4 months after that. So I only started running a couple of weeks before national champs last year, which was not a fun way to try and get myself fit for a national championships. But that was certainly a very big setback. And having to take 4 months, so it was 6 weeks on crutches, 4 months not a step of running, and every second day doing pool running in the pool for like 90 minutes, which was lots of cycling as well. So there was a lot of rehab involved with that one. And then I suppose in a way a mental setback for me, or just something that hurt a lot at the time, was that my first world championships that I went to, I trained so hard for 12 weeks and invested everything I had in it. And I got there so fit and I was so happy with everything and how it had gone. And then I picked up a stomach bug like 3 days, like as we moved into the team hotel, 3 days before the event, because I'm celiac, I suppose. And I think it very much felt like just the gluten poisoning or gluten contamination from eating at the hotel buffet, which I should have known better, but wanted to eat with the team sort of thing. So I was very sick on the day of my first world champs. And after investing so much into it and sending myself broke just trying to get there as well, but also just it was everything that I wanted, but then it just went horribly wrong. I actually fainted halfway through the race. I still got to the finish line, so I was happy with getting to the finish line, but I feel like for a long time after that I was trying to like make up for the disappointment that came with that, because it made me realize how when you invest everything into one race or one thing, you very much in a beautiful way set yourself up for a big disappointment if it doesn't go wrong, because you also set yourself up for success, but there's the other side to that as well. So I experienced that first go, and it wasn't fun, but it was very, very much a step along the journey that has helped in the long run.
Yeah. So obviously you got to train hard physically and mentally, but how much does it cost to do these races? They wouldn't be cheap, would they?
Pardon?
They wouldn't be cheap.
They wouldn't. No. So, well, mountain running in Oz, look, it's not big. It's a tiny little sport. I'm very incredibly lucky to have sponsors that help me out with a lot of gear, nutrition. So yeah, like Tailwind sponsor me as well. So shout outs to Solomon, Sunto, Crampix, Tailwind, all those people that Revies as well that just help me out with decreasing my cost of gear. But to get to the races and even to world champs, like I'm paying my way to get to world champs and represent Australia. There's no reimbursement for any of those costs or anything. And so there's all the flights, the travel to get there in between. Thankfully, there's a lot of races that will give free entry, but you've just got to get yourself there. So there's just all the big flights of costs, but by far the biggest expense is the training beforehand. So like before world champs, the first time and even last time, when you're racing at altitude and you don't live at altitude or you don't live by mountains, I spend a lot of money investing in altitude training, so altitude tents or just going to an altitude chamber to run on a treadmill and do sessions on the treadmill. There's weekly massages to keep me going, and all the costs of the food, because there's a hell of a lot of food to eat and all those sorts of things. So it's the daily training costs that the sports doctors and all those sorts of things that really add up in the lead up, that then the big one cost of the race in a way is a lot at once, but pales in comparison to how much I spend in my daily life investing in getting the most out of my body.
How much food do you burn through a day?
Oh, a lot. I'm a vegan celiac, so the volume of food is huge, and that's one thing that I've worked very, very hard on with a lot of dietitians and different inputs from people. Because being celiac, I also have polycystic ovary syndrome. So there's a lot of factors that go into getting my diet right to make sure that I'm eating enough and can train well, and my body's healthy to enable to do it. And I don't get caught up in my head of what I should look like as opposed to how I should function. So yeah, there's a lot of food. Like even my coach, when I was traveling with him for the first time, and he just looked at how much I would buy every day, and he's like, "So that's like 3 days of food, right?" And I'm like, "Nah. This is going to last me like 12 hours."
Crazy. And I guess you have to be really picky with your food now. Like being on all these drugs stuff up your organs, where now you have to, eat
Well, yeah,
natural.
I've got a lot of things going wrong there. So yeah, I do eat very natural. I don't eat many processed foods whatsoever. I eat a lot of fruit, a lot of berries. Anyone that knows me knows that berries just don't last long around me by the kilo. Yeah, I've got a lot of factors that go into getting my diet right, because being celiac, obviously I'm avoiding gluten in like the extreme form of just avoiding anything that's even touched gluten. Having polycystic ovary syndrome adds another factor of trying to regulate my hormones to make them function well for me. And then I choose plant-based because that's one of the things that mentally, if I'm a mental health, has made a huge difference. And then also for my physical health and how happy I am with the way I am living my life and the impact I'm having on those around me and the environment is very much comes into play there. So yeah, my diet is very, very natural. And is like very simple, but thankfully I'm the type of person that does not mind at all eating exactly the same thing every day for weeks on end, because I love the food I eat, I enjoy the taste of it, and I like routine. So I eat very similar every single day.
I love talking diet because certain diets have different effects on different people. Like you, I guess mainly plant-based works really well for you, and then some people,
Yeah,
like carnivore diet's been very popular last 6 months
yeah.
or something. So, and that works really good for some people as well. And then you get people with just a balance of both. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it just shows you how adaptable the human body is. Like we can adapt to eat a hell of a lot of things, but it's just, yeah, I try and follow the evidence that I find and the research I do and where it leads me. And back 4 years ago now, it led me to a plant-based diet. I tried it and I've never, ever turned back, because life's just gotten better since. So, and I know there's a lot of factors that come into doing it right, as with any of the diets, and even a normal, like what people would call a normal diet. I'm like, where did that come from, and why are you choosing those foods? Like it always amazes me how people don't question why they choose the foods that they eat every single day of their life and what they're putting into their body every day. So it's a very big aspect of life that should be thought about a little bit more. And I hope, and thankfully all the information about it is becoming more and more available. So
There's a lot of information. You get flustered going through it.
there is, and actually I just did part of my biomedicine course is nutrition, and the entire first 3 weeks I think were how to decipher nutrition research and how to actually read nutrition research papers and make sure that they're actually good papers. So I'm very blessed in having that training to actually be able to pick a good bit of research and good bit of information from others. So I have my very trusted sources that I go to for my information, because I know it's come from peer-reviewed, randomized controlled trials, like all the scientific terms that most people probably wouldn't pay much attention to. But unfortunately, yes, there is a lot of information out there that doesn't come from good sources whatsoever. So I don't pass on too much at this stage because I'm still in my own process of learning. So I'll more than happily, like I've helped a lot of my family and people close to me with their diets, because I do have qualifications in nutritional counselling, but I'm still on my own journey of learning, and it's because of that reason that like there's so much information out there that people get flooded that you just see people overwhelmed. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way to just get good information to people so that they can make informed choices. Because you're right, there's no one diet that's going to work for absolutely everyone. But there's a much better diet than the one that is the norm at the moment.
Yeah. And then people watch all these little Netflix documentaries that push certain diets. Oh,
Yeah.
so much out there. I
Yes,
think
there is.
I watched one a month ago. I think it was on vegan. I went vegan for like 2 days. I was like, no, I cannot do it.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, and to be fair, 2 days is not long enough at all for any diet to test it out. But I just encourage people to do their own research and be their own experiment. Like, just become an experiment of one. Figure out what works for you. But there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. 2 days of just trying something out and deciding it's crap is not going to get you very far for anything.
I love meat.
But then there's like, if you like, for me back in the day when I went vegan, it was like, okay, I'm going to try this for 30 days because 30 days gives me a good chance to actually get information on how I feel, because the first week of any diet change, you're going to feel a bit crap, like, and all those sorts of things. So, but then like as I got better and everything sort of fit, like I felt a hell of a lot better, like that became my evidence sort of thing. So, and I had experimented with so many different diets before that, like I was half of them eating disorders, half of them trying to get around that and get out of it sort of thing and help myself. But yeah, it's a huge thing that we all face every day. But I just encourage people to actually experiment, actually do their research and figure out what is in line with their values and also makes them feel the best.
So when you, I guess, have some free time, what are your hobbies?
Study. I do a lot of stuff. Although I'm currently learning Spanish, but I suppose that's still study again a little bit. Yeah, free time. I write poetry. At times, to be honest, I don't remember the last time I really had free time. Although I do every now and again watch a like Netflix documentary or those sorts of things. I love walking my dog. I have a dog. I love cuddles with my dog, walking my dog. Watching Netflix and all those sorts of things, or just going out hiking, or even those, like being in nature, and especially around people that I love and the people I want to be around and the people I connect with. I have a very small circle of people that I'm close to and that actually know me for me and everything about me, but it's that small but perfect sort of little circle of people. So spending time with them, catching up for food and cooking for each other and those sorts of things. And it's one of the things where part of me goes, it should happen more, but not really, because I'm on a big mission with my life and there's a lot of stuff I want to get done. So I fit in a lot to each day, and free time is something I usually fill with something that really invigorates my soul or like helps me feel happy.
Yeah. And talking about mission, what is the mission? What's the big goal for you?
Big goal, or there's the running goal, and then there's the study goal, and then there's just one of my goals is sort of just to have an impact in terms of changing the way things are done in areas that need it. So at the moment, I'm lucky enough to be able to do that through volunteering with the Butterfly Foundation and sort of helping be a voice of lived experience. So they always ask for feedback from lived experience for a lot of their projects and stuff. So I'm part of a couple of panels there to help with that. And that's the impact side of things, of just trying to help as many people. And I don't actually mind if that's a small number of people in a huge way or a large number of people, just trying to sort of help people in the way that I was helped along my own journey. But running, there's so many goals there, but big ones is like get to the ultra scene. 100-kilometer world championships would be one thing that I love to have a crack at. I have my coach also coaches Kirsten Bull, who I'm not sure you would have heard of, but she won the 100-kilometer world championship. So she was the world champion the year that I joined with my coach, and I've forever been inspired by that and inspired by her to have a crack at that myself. So working towards that sort of thing. But there's a lot of races that are on the bucket list, and when I put a race on my bucket list, it's not just to run the race, it's usually to compete to my absolute best ability. So I want to get my standing a lot better in the World Mountain Running Championships at some point, in whatever form they go ahead in. Comrades Marathon is certainly on my list. I'll get up to the 100-mile events at some point, but I've been taught the value of this slow process there and making it sustainable. So I've taken a very slow process to get to even the 85K race that I'm doing, because I wanted to do that back in the day. But essentially there's a lot of little goals along the way to very big goals of competing on the world stage to the best of my ability at that point in time, and working my way up that ladder, I suppose, and then going into research, getting a PhD in something. I'll figure that out along the way, but the PhD is another big goal.
Very exciting. Well, hopefully the world opens up for you next year so you can start running a lot of these.
I damn well hope so. It better.
And I guess waking up every morning, what's your purpose? What's your why for life now?
To make the most of the day. We've got time, and time's not granted. It's certainly a gift there. So I suppose my purpose is to get the best out of myself, and in doing so encourage the best out of the people around me. So that would sum it up.
Is there any sort of, I guess, mantra that you live by?
There's a lot. There's a lot of different quotes that have gotten me through life in a way. One of my favorite quotes is there's a couple actually. There's the man in the arena. I love that speech. And then also the Teddy Roosevelt, it is hard to fail, but it is worse to never have tried to succeed. So it's that whole idea that have a crack. You never know where you'll get if you actually invest everything in it and really try, because I didn't get anywhere in life or anywhere in my recovery or anywhere in my running until I went all in. And so all in is very much a bit of a mantra there, of just go all in.
Exactly. And so many people don't do it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You have a little setback and then you know what to do differently.
Yeah, it's that whole idea of you set yourself up for disappointment, but it's also the only way to set yourself up for true success.
It's all a learning experience.
Yeah.
What's your definition of success? Do you have one?
Contentment, in a way. It's very much internal. I'm more internal. Like I use external validators, I suppose, as much as anyone does, but I'm out there racing myself. I'm out there trying to get the best out of myself, and I'm happy on any finish line that I know I've gotten the best out of myself. I'm very, very, very pissed off on finish lines where I know I packed it in a little bit. And so success to me is just that. It's knowing that I gave something my all, and I don't need someone else to tell me that my all was good or bad enough, because to me, I know what it is, and I know what I'm capable of. And it's a very powerful place to be, to know what you can do, and also keep yourself accountable when you know you haven't given that. So yeah, success is just giving my all.
And last question, what's one piece of advice you could give someone, I guess, that's gone through a similar situation that you have?
Keep trying new things. The biggest thing that I suppose I look back on my story of just going, the only thing that I see as a constant is that I kept trying different things when I figured something wasn't, when I finally truly knew something wasn't working. So it's that idea of, if no matter where you are in life, if you try something new, then something has to change. And so that change can be for the worse at times, but it also gives you a chance to change for the better. And as long as something's changing, there's hope that it will get better at some point. So just keep trying new things from wherever you are.
Exactly. 100% spot on there. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up there. Thank you for coming on and actually sharing your story. It's been a truly inspirational chat, and I hope all the listeners get something out of this. So thank you.
Quickly, no, thank you for giving up your time. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Quickly, where can the listeners find you on socials?
So I'm on Instagram as the Flying Brick with an underscore at the end. I do have a Facebook page, so Simone Brick, just on there as for my athlete page. And then my website is www.stillwerise.com.au. There's all my, because I'm in run coaching, and strength and conditioning training and all those sorts of things. So that all the information for that's on there, as well as blog and poetry and kind of my life in a way. So yeah, there's the website is for information, but then to follow along of what I'm doing, it's Instagram mostly, and I'm not on anything else much at all. I have no idea what a lot of the other ones are.
I love the name of the website as well. What's the meaning behind that?
It was that whole idea of we rise up together. So it's that whole, everyone can get broken down at times, but and it's rare to rise up by yourself from that. And so that whole idea of by rising myself, or by lifting yourself out of any situation, you're also able to lift others. And so it's that whole idea of we're in it together, and no matter where you are in life, you can get up. And it's, I suppose, a bit of a play towards getting to the mountains and getting to the top of whatever mountain you're tackling. And that there's metaphors everywhere in life for that. So yes, no matter what knocks you down in life, we can rise.
Exactly. Well, Simone, you're truly inspirational. Thank you for coming on. I'll put all your links down in the bio. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you do, please remember to like, share, and subscribe.